just think we should be inclusive. Of whom? Truly, does Caitlin Clark, does Sophie Cunningham have the requirement? Are they required to be inclusive of LeBron James? Answer it. Answer the damn question. Are they hashtag part of the problem if they say no to someone of that size and strength coming into their locker room and playing against them on the basketball court because they're not going to be, quote, inclusive in your world?
I don't think we should feel like our safe space is being threatened. That's what I enjoy about the WNBA, and I think we have to continue to safeguard that. I come from a space of inclusion, and the narrative that I think that is problematic is to suggest that, number one, that transgender athletes are the biggest problem in women's sports. And I think this is what's bothersome, is that there's a faction of people in our country that are making this a massive issue. We have some issues. Number one, we need to protect trans kids. Every kid. To me, it's a human rights issue.
How about these comments? Incredibly thoughtful, easy to find online, and just encourage anyone to go and listen.
Very thoughtful, easy to find. I would encourage it. Why don't you keep your mouth shut? You have no idea what you're talking about, Rebecca. I challenge you, Rebecca, come on this show. Let's have a debate. If you have any guts whatsoever, you come right here. I will let you finish your answers. I will let you make all your points. Instead of just trying to propagandize the ESPN audience, which you would fall out of your damn chair if you saw LeBron James show up at an Indiana Fever game. You'd fall out of your damn chair.
Sophie Cunningham said something honest, and now half the league is treating her like she committed a crime.
Also wanting to protect young girls who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Just can you expand your viewpoint on that?
I mean, I think I said what I said. I think it's kind of common sense. And I think I'll always believe in that. I think it's really important to protect children. And that's little girls who are also involved in that category. And so I stand on what I said, and I'll always believe that.
That's it. That's the whole thing that started this avalanche. Not a rant, not an attack on a teammate, just an athlete answering a direct question the way she actually feels. Nobody forced the topic on her. A reporter asked, and she gave a real answer instead of the usual safe, forgettable one athletes are trained to give in these situations.
Now, like I said, 65 to 80% of people within America, according to recent polls, including one from Gallup and others, believe with what Sophie Cunningham is saying, that biological men should not be able to play against women in sports. Now, that is definitely not something that WNBA fans agree with. This is also the same day that we see the jersey burning clip. Somebody burned Sophie Cunningham's jersey. They said it was because of her thoughts on trans women in sports. Burning a jersey never really makes any sense to me. I would just sell it. That person seems like they could use the money.
And ever since those words left her mouth, it's felt like the entire WNBA machine decided she needed to be put back in her place. Fans have booed her on the road, in more than one city, in more than one arena. Coaches have taken shots at her without even saying her name, which is its own kind of message. And now the referees are somehow finding ways to call fouls on her, even when she's the one getting hit in the face on national television.
Defensive foul. No hostile act occurred. There was no secondary act after the defensive foul. Play resumes with Minnesota ball on the sideline.
Oh, you didn't realize they called that on Sophie Cunningham?
No. Okay. So I think it should be an offensive foul. I don't think it should be a defensive foul.
And here's the thing. Now, when they go and look at that...
Start with the game against the Lynx, because this is where things really escalated from words into something physical. Second quarter, Cunningham's guarding the perimeter like she always does, hustling on defense the way she's built her entire reputation on since she came into this league. She's never been the flashiest scorer on the floor, but she's always been the player coach's trust to get under an opponent's skin and make life difficult defensively.
Can someone please explain to me, how is this a foul on Sophie Cunningham? How in the world Is that not an offensive foul? Here it is again. How can you possibly call that a defensive foul? How?
She takes a hard elbow straight to the mouth. Not a graze, not incidental contact you can explain away as two players getting tangled up fighting for position. A real shot that snaps her head back and drops her for a second. The refs stop play immediately to review it for a possible hostile act, which tells you they at least thought it looked bad enough on first glance to warrant a closer look at the monitor.
A foul on Sophie Cunningham.
Sophie Cunningham lost teeth, but it wasn't a foul.
How about our WNBA refs? This is just a defensive foul. Thank you for the review. Just a defensive foul. No hostile act. Just a foul on Sophie Cunningham. They call that a foul on Sophie Cunningham.
Clear as day.
She got 14 of her teeth on the ground. That's a defensive foul. And they reviewed it for a hostile act.
It's so obvious.
Yeah, Sophie saying, hey, I just got my jaw broke. Let's watch this.
And what
one more
happens?
time.
Nothing.
This is on Sophie? No, I don't think so.
Could it be any more obvious?
No, I don't think so. Elbow to the jaw to 14 teeth gone. That's offensive, bruh.
It's insane to me that this league will treat their biggest draw the way they do. She's missing teeth now, but she didn't get a foul. No, but I'm sure it's just coincidence. I'm sure the ref just missed it, right?
And then they come back from the review and call the foul on her. Not on Coffee, the player who threw the elbow. On Sophie, the player who took it in the face. The league's explanation afterward was that she reached in just before the elbow landed, which is technically an answer, but it's not a satisfying one once you actually watch the replay frame by frame and see where the real contact happened first.
Women's League. Not only does Sophie Cunningham have to deal with backlash from her fellow athletes and some viewers, but it seems like she's dealing with the refs as well. Look at this.
Defensive foul. No hostile act occurred. There was no secondary act after the defensive foul. Play resumes with Minnesota ball on the sideline.
Oh, you didn't realize they called that on Sophie Cunningham?
No, okay, so I think it should be an offensive foul. I don't think it should be a defensive foul.
Even the guys calling the game on national television thought the whole thing was backwards. You had analysts sitting there in real time on air saying this should have been an offensive foul on Coffee, not a defensive foul on the player who just got hit square in the mouth. That's not a case of angry fans overreacting on social media after the fact. That's the broadcast booth itself, the people whose entire job is to stay neutral and call it as they see it, looking at the same footage everybody else saw and going, wait, that's not right. That call doesn't match the tape. So now you've got a player who took a shot to the face on live television and somehow walked away from an official review with a foul added to her stat line instead of the player who hit her. Now here's where things get more complicated, because this isn't just about one questionable call from a referee anymore. This is about a coach on another team deciding to make a public statement aimed right at Cunningham the day before the two teams even stepped on the floor together.
I think the commissioner and the league have a responsibility to ensure that any topic that could be problematic for players that they perceive and to be unsafe or threatened in any way or discriminated against. I think that's it's something that's fair for our leadership. I'm quite sure that they have eyes on and ears on to make sure that it's a safe space for everyone. And that's what makes our league beautiful. In terms of my views, as I said last week, I come from a space of inclusion, and the narrative that I think that is problematic is to suggest that number one, that transgender athletes are the biggest.
Cheryl Reeve stood in front of reporters the day before facing the Fever and basically responded to Cunningham's comments without ever saying her name out loud. She talked about protecting trans kids, she pushed back hard on what she called a problematic narrative, and she made it pretty clear who exactly she was talking about, even without naming her directly in front of the cameras. Now, coaches are allowed to have opinions, and nobody's saying Reeve doesn't get to speak her mind on an issue she clearly cares about on a personal level. That's not a neutral basketball statement about matchups or game plans. That's picking a side in a fight that's already following Sophie everywhere she goes, on the road and at home.
Well, we see Cheryl Reeve wearing a shirt today in support of trans kids. Trans kids belong on the shirt. This in the aftermath of Sophie Cunningham's recent comments. We actually saw Cheryl and Sophie speaking at center court pregame.
And then she doubled down on it visually, just to make sure nobody missed the point. Reeve wore a shirt reading "Trans kids belong" right there on the sideline during the actual game against Cunningham's team. Again, that's her right. Coaches wear all kinds of statements on their warm-up gear these days, and league culture has generally encouraged that kind of expression. That's not a coincidence of scheduling. That's a choice. Here's the part that got clipped and shared everywhere within minutes of it actually happening, because cameras caught the whole thing before anyone in either organization could control the narrative around it.
Sir, you have to move in.
Cameras caught Reeve and Cunningham standing at mid-court, deep in conversation, before the opening tip. Nobody outside that conversation knows exactly what was said between the two of them. Reeve later described it as cordial, saying both of them understood they had platforms and both wanted to educate people, even in the moments where they clearly disagreed on the actual issue. A coach who just spent the day before publicly framing your personal beliefs as a problematic narrative, and who's now wearing a shirt that reads like a direct response to what you said, walks up to you at center court right before the game starts. Whatever was actually said in that moment, and it might genuinely have been polite and even kind, the whole scene still reads like a confrontation dressed up as a friendly chat for the cameras. Reeve gets to look like the bigger person for having the conversation at all. Cunningham gets stuck standing there in front of a national broadcast audience, put on the spot in a moment she didn't ask for and couldn't really walk away from, right before she has to go play 40 minutes of basketball in front of a crowd that's already primed to be hostile toward her. That's not really a fair position to put anyone in, no matter how polite the actual words exchanged might have been. And then the game actually started, and things got loud fast. Loud enough that it drowned out most of the actual basketball being played that night.
Bringing politics into sports. The league doesn't have a problem with politics in sports. They have a problem with conservative politics in sports. And I will tell you, Sean, every time Sophie was on the court, every time she was subbed in, every time she threw up the ball, she was booed by the entire stadium virtually, bar me and Jinsei, who was sitting next to me, owner of XXXY Athletics. They're trying to do to her what they've done to people like me, what they do to people like you. They call you reprehensible, totally inaccurate things like racist. And I think that's at best. And they use violence against you at worst. But I will tell you that Sophie is absolutely unshakable. She is unwavering, and that makes her uncancelable. And that sort of confidence and courage that she exudes is certainly contagious.
Well, it's not going to go away.
Every single time Sophie touched the ball at Target Center, a chunk of the crowd let her hear it. Not just when she checked into the game off the bench, which is usually when that kind of reaction happens and then fades out. Every touch, the entire night, for 40 minutes straight. That's a specific kind of hostility. The kind that follows a player around the court possession after possession instead of fading after the first few minutes once the crowd gets it out of their system. And this wasn't even the first time something like this had happened to her that same week. Two nights earlier in Portland, fans booed her the moment she checked into the game, and some people in the crowd waved small trans pride flags directly at her while she was actively trying to play through it. Cunningham's response to that one was pretty simple, and honestly kind of perfect given the situation. She just knocked down a three-pointer right in front of them and let the shot do the talking. Say what you want about her opinions on the actual issue. That takes a certain kind of mental toughness that a lot of people watching from their couch probably underestimate. It's not just Cunningham feeling the pressure from all sides, it's spilling over onto anyone who tries to publicly back her up too, which is maybe the part of this whole story that should worry people the most.
assumed that the league or someone affiliated with the league would not have wanted me to have that sign there. So I was very careful going into the game. I looked up all of the rules. I knew it had to be on an 11 by 17 inch piece of paper or poster board. I left no derogatory comment, nothing negative, nothing political. My sign said, Sophie, thank you. Signed, a girl mom. A lot kinder than a lot of the signs that I saw in there, I'll tell you that. Someone from across the court, I'm assuming it was someone who was maybe a security person affiliated. He was very obviously with either the Target Center or the WNBA. He looks at me and says, put that sign down. And I'm looking around, there's like 1,000 signs beside me. And so I keep holding, and he comes over there, he says, you can't have your sign. I said, well, why? He said, well, it has her name on it. I said, I can't have this sign because it has Sophie's name on it. He said, that's right, you can't. It shows you that the league very clearly has an agenda that they are trying to purport that is not representative of reality at all. The only people that the Lynx or whoever was in charge of the camera put on the Jumbotron were people who were draped in their pride flags and their trans flags, who had their trans signs. Some of those wearing those shirts that says protect trans kids or protect trans lives that have a literal knife on it, an object that is used and intended for violence. And then you have Cheryl Reeves, the coach, wearing a shirt that says trans kids belong. They say that Sophie has aligned herself politically conservative because she has stood by the slogan of protect women's sports.
Riley Gaines says a Target Center staffer told her to lower a sign she brought supporting Cunningham at that same Lynx game. According to the venue's own posted signage policy, there's nothing that actually bans a sign just because it has a specific player's name written on it. So if that account is accurate, and there's no real reason to doubt it given how it played out, somebody working that event actively tried to quiet down a message of support that wasn't even breaking any rule the arena had posted for fans that night. That's part of sports, always has been, and Sophie's handled that part without complaint or public frustration. But if venue staff are actively trying to stop people from showing support for a player just because of what she personally believes off the court, that's a completely different problem. And it says a lot about how one-sided this whole environment has gotten around her in a very short amount of time.
Pretty clear here on the WNBA. Sophie's alone. She's alone right now.
I think there are a lot of people that agree with her. They just don't want to talk about it.
But that's even worse.
Yeah, it is.
That's even worse, that you're going to allow one of your colleagues that's trying to protect all of you guys, as if it's a controversial point of view to say that the men should play in the men's league and the women should play in the women's league.
This is all just crazy to me because honestly, silence implies that you're okay with men playing in women's sports. And some people have argued that, oh yeah, well, there's not that many doing it. That's how it starts. It starts out small. And if you don't say that you're not okay with it, it's going to continue growing. That's the point. That's what Sophie is trying to say. Have a great day, Patriots.
Put it all together and you've got a player who answered one honest question when a reporter asked her directly, took an elbow to the face on national television, and somehow got called for the foul anyway. Watched an opposing coach publicly frame her personal beliefs as dangerous the day before facing her on the court, got booed in multiple cities on multiple nights within the same week, and had at least one supporter allegedly told to lower a sign backing her up at a game where she wasn't even the one holding it. That's a pretty rare thing in professional sports right now, where most athletes have learned through years of media training to give the safe, forgettable answer and just move on with their day without drawing any real attention.
I don't know. I'm not a very political person, but I do have beliefs. I have morals, and I'll always stand on those and be true to who I am. And I think people are going to take it how they want to take it, but I've never even really said anything about that. And so when it comes just to protecting young girls in sport and women in sport, I feel very strongly about that. I think that's why you have Title IX. That's why you have some of the greats in women's sports. If Title IX and women's sports were protected, then you wouldn't hear about any type of women in sport. And so I think in the future, it's just really important to protect. Like I said, I extend love, and I don't dislike anyone. Like, I think there is room for absolutely everyone here, and I think there's room to love everyone. And I truly think when you get people in the same room, you have conversations, you actually have a lot in common with a lot of people. And so I'm there to love, but I'm also there to love biological women, and I think that there are rights that need to be protected. And like I said, I'm going to stand true to that. I'll never falter in my beliefs in that, but I have never once said I hated the trans community. Like I said, I think there's space for everyone.
Sophie didn't do that. She held her ground on something she clearly believes in. She took the criticism that came with holding that ground, and she kept showing up to play every single night anyway. Through the boos, through the benching questions that followed, through a face full of elbow that somehow ended up as a foul against her instead of the player who threw it. Whatever you personally think about the actual issue she spoke on, it's hard to honestly argue she hasn't handled the fallout with a lot more composure and consistency than most of the people who've been coming after her since this all started. Because right now, based on everything that's played out over these last 2 weeks, from the referees to the opposing coaches to the crowds in 3 different arenas, it doesn't look like she's getting that protection from anyone, and it's worth asking why that is.